Do you have a reaction to the Alabama Supreme Court ruling on the fact that embryos are children?
Yeah, I was all for it. We need to have more kids. We need to have an opportunity to do that. And I thought this was the right thing to do. But
IVF is used to have more children, and right now IVF services are paused at some of the clinics in Alabama. Aren't you concerned that this could impact people who are trying to have kids?
Well, that's for another conversation.
Yeah, another conversation, like with a guy who knew what he was talking about, perhaps. Or after I've been briefed by my handlers, what do you expect out of me? I'm only a 70-year-old man. Get out of here with these questions that I feel super confident to speak about until you provide information about what's really going on. Look, jokes aside, and Tommy Tuberville is like flailing to try to answer this. He doesn't know what side of the issue he's supposed to be on. We'll return to him in his attempt to dig himself out of that hole that he's in. But the stakes are high because, as the reporter alluded to, the Alabama Supreme Court did earlier this week rule that frozen embryos are now children, at least for the purposes of other states stripping the rights away from people who want to have kids. Every other aspect of how that could potentially affect the tax law or anything like that, I'm sure they're not going to have them be children. But for now, many people, including in Alabama, are trying to figure out, what does that actually mean for us, for people who might be trying to use IVF? And already a number of clinics there are starting to pause their services or plan to potentially shut down. We're going to return to that. I do want to give you a little bit more of Tommy Tuberville. He has now been told sort of what IVF is. So now maybe he's prepared to discuss this important topic.
People need to have, we need more kids. We need the people to have the opportunity to have kids.
Senator, what do you say to the women right now in Alabama who no longer have access to IVF, or who will not, as a result of this ruling? What do you say to them?
Well, that's a hard one. It really is. It's really hard. Because again, you want people to have that opportunity. And that's what I was telling her. We need more kids.
Yeah, so look, it's uncomfortable at this point to take a long, hard look at our elected leaders because we're raised and trained to believe that these are special people. After all, he's not just some yokel congressman, he's a senator. He's part of the Senate, the greatest deliberative body in this world. And all he has to fall back on is, we want to have more kids, so I know I'm supposed to be pro-life, but that doesn't seem consistent, and I have no capacity whatsoever to quick think my way out of this hole. And so he supports it, but not. He wants more kids, even though it's going to stop people in that state and potentially outside of it from having kids. It's an absolute mess. And we're going to talk about sort of the reality on the ground of it. But I want to start with you, Yas, give you an opportunity to weigh in. What do you think about this?
Yeah, whenever these stories come up, I never really know how to respond. It's kind of like, as a woman, I know we're going to talk about Matt Gaetz in a little bit, and I really just don't care what any of these Republican men have to say about issues regarding reproductive health. And this is such a funny, albeit infuriating story for me. The Republican Party, which is run by these very, very old men, as you pointed out, they have a branding problem, it would seem, and they have a messaging problem. They literally don't even have a political agenda right now, apart from just doubling down on these very culturally divisive issues. Issues like this one, specifically Roe v. Wade and the overturning of all of that, they have proven to be unpopular with voters. The Republicans are literally losing female voters right now, and it's over things like this, but they don't really have any other way to pivot out of the hole that they've dug themselves.
We might have millions of people watching this show, but you can be the difference maker because we just need 1% of our audience to be paid members, and then this show can be around forever. So you can make that difference. Click join now.
Yeah, it just seems obvious that this is a move that was made in that Alabama Supreme Court to sort of placate the, I guess we're still calling them evangelical right? These religious leaders, quite frankly, because it can't be for the constituents. The idea that you want to ban in vitro fertilization for couples who are having trouble getting pregnant, like it's absolutely insane, and it contradicts his stupid talking point. Like, his own ridiculous talking point is being contradicted in real time. And again, they do have a huge women problem, particularly educated women. And the idea that they would be coming out and stumping for this, but mind you, while Joe Biden and the Democrats are floundering out there, that the Republicans would just shoot themselves in the foot with this is just crazy to me.
Yeah, so much of this feels deeply crazy. I agree with you both. Yaz, I agree with you. Why is all of this going to come down to what these like old Republican men think, when what is truly important is what slightly younger Democratic men like me think? And so I'm going to start talking more about this. But no, I'm kidding. I at least care about the effect it actually has on people, and I care enough about these issues to like know what the thing is. But again, as I said, like we have to take a long, hard look at who actually is elected to these positions. The people who are tasked with like huge amounts of political power are deeply unintelligent and incurious people. That's just what they are. They don't feel the need at all to understand science, how it applies to actual people's lives. He knows as little about IVF as Marjorie Greene did when she said she doesn't think masks would work because if you fart, it goes through underwear. These are stupid people. They're powerful people, but that doesn't make them intelligent. People often conflate those two things. The same thing with intelligence and money. We're coming to learn, especially in the age of social media and Elon Musk never stopping talking, that those things don't necessarily go hand in hand. But as I said, some facilities which provide IVF services are pausing those in Alabama while they try to figure out if maybe they'll get thrown in jail if they do these procedures. One of the doctors, a fertility specialist at one of the facilities, said, "We made the impossible decision to pause new IVF treatments at our center, which is devastating for our patients and the state. Our legal team is telling us that, as the ruling is written, that modern fertility treatments cannot continue in the state of Alabama because of the risk to physicians and embryologists, given that embryos are now considered children." Because just add this to the pile of issues in which doctors, people who want to have kids, elementary school teachers, librarians could end up being locked up because some maniac with a Bible in their hand thinks that their misreading of an ancient religious text should stand in for an actual understanding of the issues, or compassion, basic decency, those sorts of things. And so we're going to turn to some of the people that disagree with this. Yaz, what do you think about like this uncertainty? And I know already some states are trying to use, like Florida, there's this effort to stop a ballot measure that would enshrine abortion rights in their state constitution. They're saying, well, that potentially should be blocked because, hey, look, now there's this precedent that embryos are children. So clearly there are Republicans trying to use this elsewhere.
This kind of reminds me, I think it speaks to a much bigger problem that we're having in this country where there is no stability and there's a lot less reliability, right? So when it comes to people trying to plan their lives out, it's becoming very difficult to do. I'm a woman who I'm at a point in my life where I probably could have frozen my eggs a few years ago. Family planning is such a personal thing, right? And just the idea of having these Republicans and these people who have beliefs who are different from mine, different from a lot of people's in this country coming in and saying, no, you can't do this. It doesn't feel like the country that we were raised in, right? In this country, we were told, you have to be proactive about a lot of things. Think about the job market, you think about retirement, things like that. All these things that we've been taught to plan for. Now, everything is just very up in the air. It's very unstable. And Republicans are talking all the time about how millennials don't want to have kids. Millennials aren't buying houses because it's scary. It's really scary to enter into a mortgage or to enter into a marriage or to have a child. And then, maybe you get laid off from work. Maybe you lose your job. Maybe the economy goes bust and then you have to work for the rest of your life. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And this is just another aspect of it. I might have gone off on a tangent there, but that's really what it feels like to me. And that might be a personal thing because of where I am in my life.
Yeah, I just think folks need to really understand that how do we get here, right? This is a very long project on the part of movement conservatism, which, essentially gets its start in the late 60s, early 70s with these free market fundamentalist sicko, Milton Friedmanites, right? And they went out looking for a constituency to be the animating sort of force behind the conservative movement. Because let's face it, free market economics trickle down. It's not really all that appealing. So what they did is that they started partnering with the Christian conservatism, right? With these evangelical types, because they actually did have institutions. They actually did have a constituency, and they've been playing footsie with them for decades now. And finally, back in the days, they would just pay lip service to this traditional family values and we love Jesus type of stuff. But these bills are coming due. They have to actually deliver for these religious right types. And that's what you see in the Supreme Court. And that's what you're seeing in the highest court in Alabama. These bills are finally coming due for the conservative movement.
Yeah, and there are such different ways that, like you're talking about, like long-term how conservatives view these issues. Like there are such different paths that they could have hypothetically taken, and maybe we'll see. They're scrambling, as you saw with Tommy Tuberville, that they could take on this issue. So there's what you might think of as a more sort of like base-focused or populist version of this, which is that you could acknowledge that IVF services it's miraculous that it works at all, but it is still restricted to people of means. It's incredibly expensive and time-consuming, and even if you're lucky enough to have insurance, it's extremely unlikely to actually pay for any of it. So what if they set up some sort of national program that helps to subsidize IVF so that poorer people who desperately want to have the kids that Tommy Tuberville knows, even if he knows nothing else, he knows that they want us to have more kids, could have access to it, or no interest loans that families can pay off for it. You could do that. Instead, they went in what I would term the elitist approach to this issue, which is they ban it so that they can feel pro-life, but it's not banned for everyone. It never is when it comes to reproductive access, technologies, procedures. If you're poor, it's banned for you. But what do you think, like a rich person in Alabama is just gonna be like, it's banned here? Shucks, I guess there's nothing I can do. I can't travel across the country or to a different country easily. They'll always have access to it, sarcasm aside. So they decided to go in the elitist route, which is poor conservatives who might desperately want to use IVF or related services, which might be under the gun next, will not be able to, but the wealthy, as always, will still have access.